Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hey, this is Tanner the Bulldozer Bozer.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Toughnut, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Friday. It's been a while since we've had a Friday archive episode, but we popped out an extra one this week. We had the boys on there Wednesday talking about the current issues, and it's just time sensitive, so I thought I would squeeze it in on Wednesday and get Eric and Leona out today. I know everybody's been waiting around for their SNP archive episode. These are becoming a fan favorite. These old stories from our community, and I listened to it again today, and I tell you, there's a lot of gold in here. So before we get there, let's get to our episode sponsors today. Jen Gilbert and team over at Coldwell Cityside Realty. They've served the community since 1976. That's over 40 years. They've served Lloydminster and in the surrounding area. They're passionate about our area, and they pride themselves on giving back through volunteer opportunities and partnerships as often as they can. Jen in particular, I sat down with her, and she got talking about being a part of the 100 Women, and if you don't know what that is, you should look it up. But essentially, they meet roughly 4 times a year. Each woman donates $100, and then $10,000 they donate to local charities. And to tie Coldwell Banker in, they even donated the Kleenex last time they met, because the stories that they get told, you can imagine, are a little raw and real. She even chuckled about that, but I thought that was pretty cool. And you're going to hear from Leona Beamish today on how things for women have changed even since she was born. And if that sounds like something, all right, let's give her a call. Well, Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty, for everything real estate. They know that home is truly where awesomeness happens. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Give them a call, 780-875-3343. HSI Group, they're the local oil field burners and combustion experts that can help make sure you have a compliant system working for you. The team also offers security, surveillance, and automation products for residential, commercial, livestock, and agricultural applications. And I don't know about everybody else. We've had a pretty nice winter. But in the last couple days here and moving into the weekend, she's getting awfully frosty. And I'm thankful every time I come to the studio and just swipe my key and get in and don't got to fumble outside in the cold. They make it easy, right? Like they really do. I mean, if you're worried about surveillance, my brother was asking me the other day, I think he was making a call over there, like whether you're talking commercial, right? You need somebody, you're out and about around the area, and you want to be at home and be confident nothing's getting broken into, give the guys a call. You got livestock, you don't want to be out every 2 minutes checking, give the boys a call, right? They got it for everything. They use technology to give you peace of mind so you can focus on the things that truly matter. Stop in today, 3902 52nd Street, or give Kim or Brody a call at 306-825-6310. Kiva Concrete, since 1979, year of the Edmonton Oilers. Yes, the glorious Oilers. Kiva Concrete has firmly been a family-owned, and I don't know why I said firmly. They've been a family-owned and operated business that has almost 42 years of business in the area, and they offer all concrete services from residential, decorative, and commercial flat work. I was looking last time at the countertops they'd done for the Elk Ridge Resort, or, of course, the new patio they've done at Spiro's Restaurant, which, nobody's sitting on at this point. But in the summertime, hopefully when things start to open up, we'll get to see some of that work. If you want to see more of what they're doing, hop on their Instagram page and just check out Kiva Concrete. They got all their latest projects, and it's pretty slick. Give Chris a call today, 780-875-7678. He's been on the podcast. He's an absolute beauty. Three Trees Tap and Kitchen, they're in collaboration here coming this weekend. So actually tomorrow night, if you listen to this Friday morning, they're working with the Kinsmen and Kinettes. They're doing their Telemiracle Steak Night. The Kinsmen will be cooking steaks outside Three Trees Tap and Kitchen. And man, did they get a cold night. Sorry, boys. And Three Trees will be packaging the steaks with a salad, potato, and dessert. The Kinsmen and Kinettes will deliver the meals to your door. That is Saturday, February 6th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tickets were $50 for steak dinners, $10 for kids' meals. I would say if you're listening to this and it's still Friday, even if it's Saturday, Give them a call. For tickets, call Lewis Stang, 306-821-7275, or Darcy Wildman, 780-871-4818. Be on the lookout for that. And if you're looking for a good meal, Three Trees and the boys and girls, kinsmen and kinettes, they're gonna fix you up, and all the money going to a good cause. Finally, Crude Master Transport. Since 2006, Crude Master has been an integral part of our community, and I've seen it firsthand. You got to hear about it this week. Heath was actually on the podcast Monday talking about his career and some of the things he's seen. He's just a guy, when he speaks, you listen. And you want to find out a little bit more about Crude Master and how they got going, go back to episode 148, and you'll hear all about the journey that Heath and his family have done with the trucking company. I talk about Heath and Tracy all the time, the final fives we have, usually at the end of the podcast. They continue to give to projects, whether we're talking this podcast, the Health Foundation Christmas Gift to the Health. They always put the community first, and here's to hoping everyone has a successful 2021, all right? If you're outside and you're looking at outdoor signage, take a look for the SNP billboard across from the UFA, and if you're like, ooh, that looks pretty dang good, which it does, give Reed and Wright a call. I suggest talking to Mrs. Deanna Wadler. Don't know why I do that. She's fantastic. She'll hook you up. And if she is listening right now, I'm still waiting on my cutout. We got a cutout of me coming here at some point. I'm looking forward to that. Finally, Gartner Management is a Lloydminster-based company specializing in all types of rental properties to help meet your needs. Whether you're looking for a small office or a 6,000 square foot commercial space, give Mr. Wade Gartner a call, 780-808-5025. He houses the podcast, and he's been an exceptional landlord. If you're into any of these businesses, make sure you let them know you're listening and have heard about them. I know COVID restrictions are making it a little bit difficult on us, but I'd appreciate it if you let them know you heard them. Without further ado, let's get on to the T-Bar 1 tale of the tape. Born and raised in between Marshall and Lashburn, Saskatchewan, a nurse and a farmer, both proud community members. Both grew up going to one-room schoolhouses, Banana Belt and Burke, and of course, they were rivals. They've been married for over 63 years and were a part of the agricultural exchange for 25 plus years, inviting kids from all over the world to come live and work on their farm. I'm talking about Eric and Leona Beamish. So buckle up, here we go. Okay, well, it's June 28th on behalf of June 28th, 2020. On behalf of the Lloydminster Archives, I'm sitting with Eric and Leona Beamish. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about your guys' lives growing up, being married, parents, volunteers, you name it. So why don't we start with where you guys are both originally from?
Well, I was born in Lloydminster, raised on the farm about 15 miles straight east of Lloydminster, and spent pretty well the rest of my life there. And early days, I can remember it was very, very isolated. We were quite quiet, not much traffic. Roads were terrible if anybody had a car, and you got to remember I came along just at the start of the Big Depression, so things were pretty slow. Traveled by horse and wagon or a cutter in the winter, so you got to know only a fairly small area of the people around you. Started school at Banana Belt at I think it was to be in the fall of 34. Or maybe that would be 35. I'm not sure on that. Anyway, took my schooling there up until grade 11. Family moved up to Lloydminster. My mother and my three sisters and myself. And we all took our high school in Lloydminster.
Now, when you talk about Banana Belt and the one-room schoolhouse, I assume?
That was a one-room schoolhouse at one time there were 31 students there.
31.
And fortunately, we had quite an experienced teacher that first 3 years. And after that, very often the teachers we got had just come out of normal school. And but we got a pretty good education considering. And then came up to Lloydminster here, and I think I was lucky. Mr. Goebel, the principal of the school, the high school at that time, was very, very much a farm boy. He'd grown up on a farm in Ontario, I think, and he knew that we had some deficiencies in our education, and he made allowances for that. And I really look back on that man with a great deal of appreciation. Got to know several good friends in Lloydminster. Actually, the class I was in, grade 11, I think there was about 25 students. I think 5 of them were boys. By the time most of the young boys at my age got to grade 10, they were off to the oil fields. It was just getting started then. So we were always outnumbered heavily by the girls in the class. And I looked on the girls, well, I had 3 younger sisters, so I'd grown up with them, but the girls in high school were, I think, quite a bit older in a lot of ways than I was. But I enjoyed my two years there. And after that, I spent the following 2 winters at the School of Agriculture in Saskatoon. And from then on, it was on to the farming, and been farming ever since.
Well, that was a lot. Well, why don't we how about yourself, Leona? Catch us up to high school. Let's hear a little bit about you, where you grew up, and catch us up to high school. And then I'd like to pick apart a couple of things in there and just talk about some things back in the early years of your guys' childhood.
Okay, well, I was raised on a farm between Lashburn and Marshall, actually 4 miles east of Marshall, and went to Burke School, which, when sports days came along, or track and field, we were in direct competition with Banana Belt. Okay. But we had the flatter schoolyard, so we made out better there. Anyway, went to school there for all my grades, or up to grade 8, and then took grade 9 and 10 by correspondence. And then to finish high school, my dad bought me my first and only bike, and I learned to bike and rode into Lashburn for grade 11 and 12, except in the winter when I would board in town.
So you pedal biked to town and back?
Yep.
And how far of a ride was that?
A little over 5 miles.
One way?
One way,
yeah.
On the country road. And if it was a bit muddy, you followed the old gravel Jasper Highway, and it was hard pedaling. But anyway, it was the way you got an education.
I bet you were in fantastic shape.
I really was, because later I went in training as a nurse, and I remember when I was having my first medical, the doctor said, "Where did you get those legs?" And I said, "Pedaling a bike." So that was the story.
Now, you both mentioned small, rural, one-room schools.
Yes.
And competing against each other.
Track and field.
Track and field. Were those fun days back in the day? Were you like licking your chops? Oh, there's those Banana Belt kids.
Well, actually, there was 4 in the group. So it was Burke, Banana Belt, Lenwall, and Landrose. So Lenwall, you'll have heard the name, because that's up into your country.
So who was the strong group? Who were the high flying athletes?
Actually, there was, well, the one I can simply remember was Madeline Woods, right? She could jump, high jump, like you couldn't believe, like a deer. If it had been nowadays, she'd have been Olympic material. But, things
Back
like
then,
that.
there was nothing.
But you only had those track and field. There was nothing to progress any further.
There was nowhere to go. Even if you were the best in, you came to that meet, there was nowhere to go after that?
No. And then gradually they set up a superintendency meet. And I suppose, but by that time I wasn't around either. So it was after I was finished there.
The thing is, you're talking about an era that took in the end of the Depression and the Second World War, and things quite really slowed down during the war years. The young men were mostly gone. Places like Lashburn and Marshall had hockey teams that travelled around during those years, but it was horse and buggy travel, so they didn't go too far. And once the war came along, the young men just disappeared.
What do you remember about the World War II? You're both young kids at that point in time.
Yeah.
Well, we listened to the news pretty regularly. I had an uncle that was in the Air Force, and he didn't come back. And I had a next door neighbor. He got killed in a training accident in England, flying. And it kind of everything was sort of tied to the war effort.
You didn't think about it because that's the way the world was, and you were growing up and you lived your life and just carried on. For me, it was, you listened to the radio. My father was from Denmark, and so he naturally was trying to always keep track of what little he could learn about what was going on with his family over there. And we learned about rationing, but not really, because we live on the farm. And to this day, I know my mom had coupon books for us for sugar and butter, but things that didn't really affect people on the farm. And so you just lived with it.
I think if the rationing hadn't come on, I'd have ended up in my 30s with complete false teeth, because all the canning, especially fruit canning, was done with a lot of sugar in the 30s. I can definitely remember that. And yes, it sort of overshadowed everything up until the end of the war, and even after.
Well, now when you look back and you look at the things that went on in the 30s, they carried over that, and they were still doing the same things into the early 50s and mid 50s, and then the world started to change, I think.
My dad was in the Canadian Army just at the end of the First World War, and he was training in a camp in North Wales when the war ended, and he spent the winter of 18 and 19 in that camp. And it was a cold, miserable place, and the flu epidemic came in there, and he said there was a month. He thinks he was on funeral parade every day. There was 80, I think just over 80 Canadians buried in a small Welsh cemetery there.
Just from the flu?
Just
from
the
that
flu.
Spanish flu. And so you get people like Eric, for instance, that can remember things like this, that we're looking at this COVID-19 and thinking, come on, think of what the Spanish flu killed.
Yes, he said that men would be, fine one day, feeling sick another day, and a day or two they were dead. It went so rapidly, and there was no real treatment for it. And the crowded conditions that they were in this camp, because the men that were there originally were augmented with men brought back from France that were being prepared to come back to Canada. And so it was a miserable place to be, and he never really forgot that. He was fortunate. He came down with the flu towards the end of the epidemic and ended up with quite a serious hearing loss that lasted the rest of his life. But otherwise, he was, I think he was quite happy to get back home.
You wanted to go back to those one-room schools. Those teachers handled every grade. From grade 1 to grade 8, definitely. And then if you had the kids that were doing grade 9 and 10, by correspondence, she was there to help you out if you needed some help. So they really worked.
Cut from a different cloth.
Well, I can't say cut from but a totally different style of coping.
How about discipline back then?
Depended on the school.
Oh, Eric?
You got the strap once in a while. It wasn't a huge problem really, and you knew that your parents, you get no sympathy from your parents if you got the strap. They say, well, next time you won't do that, for sure. And I look back on the both out at Banana Belt and even in Lloydminster. I was a little worried about coming to Lloydminster, and there'd be nothing but city kids in the class, and I think about half the grade 12, 11 and 12 class I was in were from the farm, so it wasn't a big change.
You both moved away from home for high school then, correct? You mentioned...
No, I didn't move away.
In the wintertime, you...
I boarded in town.
Boarded in town.
Yeah.
Did you live in Lloyd? When you went
the first year, we had two of, it was Herd's cabins. There were cabins that you rented, and we had two of them because they get us all in, and we had a piano because my sisters were taking music lessons. And so it was, it wasn't not great living, but I really enjoyed the people around us. We had really great neighbors, and as far as Mananimal went, they were all, we knew everybody, and they were about the only people of any description we knew. And we had kids in the school. Several of them were European origins, and some of them, I'm sure, didn't probably speak much English until they came to school. So, but the teachers were understanding, and there was never really any disciplinary problems at all. And and we had I think about three the older boys that when I started school, about 3 of them I think ended up in the forces, but they all came back, so they were fairly fortunate that way. But we had another good friend. He was almost a next door neighbor, and he was killed in a training accident in England, in the Air Force. And we had one boy who I think I saw him once or twice, but he was killed in the tank corps in Italy. And of course, with the connections like that, you really followed the war pretty seriously. And we had several neighbours that were First World War veterans that had been in the trenches, and they told the funny stories, but they never told what it was really like.
Did you worry you were going to have to go? Because you would have been 16 when the war was ending.
Yeah.
Almost 17.
Yeah, I was 17 that fall it ended. Yeah.
By that time, they weren't.
But I was too small to lie about my age and get in.
Did you think about it? Did you have friends that did it?
No. But we were, farming then. By that time, I was driving a tractor, so it, you didn't have much spare time in the summer, and in the winter there was always jobs to be done, and snow to be moved and roads to plow if you had to.
Well, and I think this is it, each school district develops sort of its own personality with the different cultures of people that are in there. We always thought Banana Belt was a bit rough. Burke was quiet. In the 10 years I went to school, I only remember the strap being used once, and I can't remember the reason on why he got it. I can remember, and so when you started school, your little, a neighbor girl taught me how to drive my horse and ride my horse, because it was a 3-mile ride to school. But the big boys always took care of the little kids. Like, we'd come into school freezing cold, they would unhitch your horse and put your horse in the barn, and it was just followed along. And I think the only time that there was one time we had marvelous snow tunnels and forts because it was winter with snow, and the boys went and blocked me up. I still have claustrophobia. I came out of those tunnels and I just cleaned my way through those boys, and so then we all ended up in the school, and they started to say, she's been fighting, and the teacher said, I was watching. She's okay. So I didn't get into trouble. But school was great because you're in grade 1 and you're learning, but you're listening to stuff above you. And then when you're in grade 2, you've already heard half of grade 2, so you know it. So grade 2 becomes easy and on to grade 3. And that's the way it goes.
Yes, I sometimes think, the kids today are missing out on some of that, catching up on getting to know something ahead of time, what was coming for the next year, and it probably made it a little easier. We were fortunate. The man who was seemed to have been the secretary for the board for years and years, was an educated man from England. And when they were getting a teacher, he would read the letters and he'd say, well, I think this is the one we should be getting. And we got some really exceptional teachers. 2 of them that I can think of right now that the superintendent we called them what? The inspector, was it we called
The
them?
inspector.
And brought two of them up to Lloyd. And they taught in Lloydminster after.
Do either of you know why it was called Banana Belt?
Yes. We had to look it up when we did the reunion.
Mm-hmm.
When the school was formed, it was they had to have a meeting finally to make, for the Department of Education, they needed a name. And so they had this list of names that everybody thought it should be called. And sort of facetiously, one of the men said, well, it's warmer here. Let's call it Banana Belt. But it was at the bottom of the list. And that's the one the Department of Education chose.
Really?
Really. And years later, I did Environment Canada stuff for many years. It's 3 degrees warmer in Banana Belt on the north side of the gully than on the south side toward Lashburn.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, Burke was
We were down in the colder part.
cold place.
But anyway, this is what the weather records show. Yeah.
What did you guys want to do when you grew up? When you were in high school or elementary school, like, did you have ideas of, like, I want to go and do this or travel the world or anything like that? Was that even a thought?
No,
Well, the first thought would be to finish school. Wouldn't you think, Eric?
pardon?
Wouldn't you think? The first thought would have been just to finish
Well, yes,
school.
but by the time I was in, by the time I was in high school, I'd pretty well decided that I was going to carry on farming, because by the time I was, I think about 12, I was driving a tractor, and from then on, I didn't really think about much else. And I figured, well, I'd had an uncle before me that had gone through the School of Agriculture in Saskatoon, which was very similar, I think, to the one that was in
Vermilion.
except we had pretty much the same instructors as the degree students were getting, and so it was a good place to be, and I really enjoyed the 2 winters I spent down there. The winters went by very quickly, and I've always thought that they were 2 good winters. I don't know that I learned a great deal to how to farm right at that stage, but it made me think about the future, about the changes that were coming, and to keep an eye on way things were progressing and what we should be thinking about. So I think it was a couple of winters that were well spent looking back over the years. And I met some friends that I kept in touch with over the years, but right now we've got down so I don't think there's more than about 4 or 5 of my class that I was in that are still around. Some of them are quite a bit older than I was, and some of them they just disappeared with age. It happens.
Do you guys ever think about that? Just friends and family, and as time marches on?
You think about it, and you just learn to accept that it happens, and you know it's going to happen to yourself.
Once I got out of the school in the winter, the next winter I was learning to fly. my father had started flying about 47, I think it was, and by the time I got to the stage where I was thinking seriously about it, he had an airplane, and so I went off to Saskatoon and got my flying license. So it kept me fairly busy. One thing and another. There was always some work to do around the aircraft because we did our own maintenance mostly. And the farm it got a little bigger, and it just seemed like we just kept going.
Me?
Sure.
Well, okay. So I'm going through public school, and all of a sudden, the attitude was that you were with some of the families was that you quit school at 16 and got a job. And I came home and you finished grade 8 and you were out in the world. It would be the same for Eric. But our parents, my father, I remember, because I was the eldest, he lined we 4 kids up and announced that, no, there's no quitting school at 16. You will go on as far as I can afford to send you till you've got your high school. So that was your goal then, to finish high school. And back then, for girls, there really wasn't much. You could be a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse. That was it. I chose nursing. And
There wasn't other options?
no, there really was no other options. Or you could go and work as a sales clerk or something, but not professional.
Is that something that's been enjoyable to watch over time as more opportunities come available?
Definitely. There are jobs coming up that you just cannot believe. Well, now, of course, there's ones that we didn't even know existed. But no, so that was what we all became. If you went away, unless you were going to work in a store or something like that you didn't need any extra education.
You know, I don't think I've asked this question or variation of this. I never really thought about it before until you bring up women and only allowing them to work in certain occupations, or that's what it seemed like.
That's all there was, yeah.
Was there instances that you remember where being a woman was difficult then?
Not for me, because I'm sort of an independent type, but but no. I think, well, you see, what had come during the war, so many of the women, well, I can't say for our total area, but the women that were able to get away and worked, and they learned to have a big job in Ontario in the munitions plants or whatever, building stuff for the war. So they came back, and now I think there was a lot of unhappiness there because there was no positions open for the education and whatnot, and so they had to go back to be a housekeeper or get married and have kids.
I think a lot depended on your family, what they wanted, and I think we both came from families that education was extremely important. My father never had any education. He never went to school, and he
because he came here when he was grade 8 or grade 10 or grade 8 or 10. 8 years old, and never went to school.
Came over on the boat.
They were the bar colonists were. He wasn't bar colony. He was.
No, my grandfather had married in Scotland and had 3 children, and decided that he had a fairly steady job, I think, there with the railway, as a clerk, and but he'd come off a farm and he wanted to go back to it, and with all the talk about the bar colonists and the people emigrating, he decided he was going to come to Canada. So he came over in the fall of 1903 to Winnipeg and worked there and got a place for the family and brought the family over in the spring of 1904. Spent 2 years in Winnipeg trying to raise enough money to come farming. And then they came up here in the fall of 1906, or the spring of 1906, sorry. And we've been on the farm ever since.
Why did they pick this area?
Probably heard something or got some information while he was in Winnipeg. I don't think there was any particular reason for picking this area, but it could be because of the bar colony and all the publicity it got. It probably thought it might be a good place to try, and he may have had some connection with somebody in Winnipeg that had been here, and would know something about the conditions that the land was like. So
Imagine coming to a place you've never seen before. Right? Like, and it isn't Hawaii where it's nice and sunny. Like, you're walking into nothing and cold for like 8 months of the year.
But
I think that 2 winters in Winnipeg for the
would have
Beamish,
got him ready for that.
they had a pretty good idea what the weather was going to be like.
But there was, when you think about it, it was awful. I don't think any of us now have the guts to go out and do it.
Well, we've become soft. You know, you guys have seen enormous amounts of change in your lifetime. You grew up with no power on the farm.
No, definitely.
You can talk about then when power gets put in.
Yeah.
Yep.
I assume that was quite the day.
Well, I had already left home by the time.
When you leave home to go to school, do you leave to a place that has power now? Or were you still without power wherever you went to?
Lashburn had its own power plant.
Really?
Yeah, a big power plant for the village.
What did it use to get power? What did it?
Big
Was
diesel
it
generator.
a big giant diesel generator?
Yeah.
So when you went to board, you were quite happy about it then.
Yeah, I had electricity. But
Living the high life.
We didn't have water there was water, but no sewer.
What do you mean no sewer? You mean like you're using a bedpan?
No, you used
Or not a bedpan, like an outhouse?
Yeah, or one inside with a pail, and the honey wagon came around once a week and collected it. You mean you've never heard of the honey wagon?
The honey wagon? No, tell me what's the honey wagon.
It's a big tank that the man that has the job comes in and gathers up the toilet pails and takes them out. And
Dumps them in.
Yep. Yeah.
And where would the honey truck go?
It wasn't trucked. It would be probably pulled by horses, but
Oh man, that'd be a tough job.
and yeah, I felt sorry for him. We thought, oh dear. No, and then I guess he went out and spread it somewhere on the outskirts of the village.
Do you remember your first day with electricity?
Well, we had a little, I think about sometime probably about 48 or 49, we had a little 1,000-watt power plant. It would run the water pump, and it would run the washing machine, not together, and it would run the lights in the house. And we had that until I think we got the power through about 55, I believe. And
Yeah, that's when power came in about north from Lashburn.
Yeah, we had that little thing popping away in the basement. You never noticed it, it was running. And most of the lights, the main lights were fluorescent because they used so much less power. And
How about farming? Farming, you would have seen a ginormous change in. I mean, just look at today, the technology you have out there roaming around. What do you remember the most of being kids, and what you had to do to, when the first giant tractor comes rolling by?
You were probably driving.
Yes, as far back as I can remember, my dad had they bought a little, what they called a Waterloo boy. It was the forerunner of the Model D John Deere. And there's one in the museum here, and it looks like a big garden tractor. And they got that in, I think, about 20 or 21. And a thrashing machine. And after that, the main farming gradually was done by tractors. Got the first rubber tire tractor, I think 1940, W6 International. We thought we had the world by the tail then. It had a road gear. You could go 14 miles an hour down the road.
Could it go that fast?
Yeah. You didn't haul machinery that fast because the machinery was mostly on steel wheels.
No, and then, of course, my father was a smaller farmer, but it was horses until I can remember his first tractor was a little Ford tractor, a little gray one, I remember. And so it would be, now we're talking, this is the end of the war where there's no help. So you learned, my brother and I, who were the eldest, we learned to drive those tractors at harvest time and whenever there was, because it was, my dad would be on the binder and Dad said we took turns because you don't miss school. So I'd drive the tractor one day and Wayne would do it the next day. That's how it worked.
Yeah, there was one fall when the crop was really down badly. We had quite a lot of oats. And I remember going home, I'd go home at noon from school and drive the tractor, pulling this binder converted to a swather, doing these down oats. And it was a long time to get across the field. And I think it was an 8-foot cut on that binder. Took a lot of days. But I didn't mind. But, that was just the way it was. Once the war ended, then my dad generally had help through the summer, and so I missed out on those kind of things. I had to stay in school, which is probably a good thing. But no, I think both our families were very, very proactive about making sure we got as much education as we could.
How about you two? When did you guys? I know you competed against each other and you looked down on the other district and the little schools.
Yeah.
When did you actually start dating?
Actually, I came back from working up in Lac-La-Biche and started business college here because I wanted to get some more education. And happened to be going to a hockey game in Lashburn.
To watch the
Lashburn, who probably Hillmond.
Or Maidstone.
those dirty
Or
Hillmond.
Maidstone. So there you go. Yeah. So that was how we sort of met. Well, the reason Eric even spoke to me was that my brother and I had gone and at intermission. We went out to buy a hamburger and Wayne got his first and walked away, and I'm standing there. Wait, I haven't any money. No, I don't. I mean, hamburgers were only 15 cents, but I didn't have 15 cents. So he gentlemanly stepped up and said, I'll pay for it. And paid for it. So that was it.
You smooth dog, you. Hey?
So I've been paying off that hamburger ever since.
What did you guys used to do for dates? Where would you take her? What would you do for an outing?
Not much of anything.
Yeah.
Go to
I think
a
we
show.
learned square dancing.
Went square dancing.
It's the only time we took square dancing.
Go to a show. Go to ball games. Whatever was going on.
Yeah.
Because I was going to, well, I don't know what we did, summer. There wasn't that much stuff going on.
How about how did he propose? Did he propose?
I guess he did. I think he even said, and I'll check with your father, and I said, my dad isn't making my decisions. So,
See, I didn't know her that well at that time.
How long did you guys date before you got married?
only about, 6 or 7 months? 8 months?
Probably about 8 months.
I don't know.
Was that standard for back then? Yeah, the reason,
Well,
or was it just you knew?
Well, I suppose. Yeah, because, he sort of delayed me because I wasn't planning on staying here in Lloyd. I came home to take my business course and then I was off to the next place. So, anyway, we started going out together and I just worked here instead. So, that was it.
You wanted to go other places?
Oh, I had a long list of things to do. Well, the nursing was going to take me. And that's what I stayed with. I kept my nursing going the whole time. No. Eric's sister was getting married that summer in the middle of all this. And so everything was all mixed up. I think it was the thing to do. Just everybody was getting married.
What year did you guys
age.
get married?
57.
So that puts you at
63 years this
63 years.
This year.
So what is the secret to 63 years of marriage?
I don't know. Grit your teeth and hang on.
You learn to keep quiet.
What are some of your fondest memories? When you look back at 63 years of being married together, what are some of the things that stick out?
I don't know. Probably the arrival of our boys. And you just went on and enjoyed life. And just watch everything. Watching the trees grow that you plant and just living with nature around you and watching.
Did you guys build a house then?
Yeah.
Did you build it yourself, or did you pay somebody to build
No.
it?
He built it. He built the first one, and we built the second one. Like, this first one is a small one considered these days, but it was anyway. And so then when the boys got bigger, our two boys, it was just a bit crowded. So then we built a new house in '76, and it was one of the Nelson packages, and so everybody builds it.
And you felt like, oh, here is this beautiful house.
Well, I remember when we were picking the plans, because Eric said, I want this and this, and I said, I want this and this, and so I'm looking at the house plans, and at the end I said, Eric, it's got a built-on garage. Neither one of us had requested a built-in garage. Never thought of having our car inside in a garage.
So what did you think of that when it was built?
Oh, that was good. We all did it. It was great. You grow up with something. I can remember before we had that house, coming to work at the hospital. So you'd go out, your car had been plugged in, yes, so that it would start in the morning. And then, if there'd been a storm overnight, you literally plowed your way to work. And I remember once or twice, I came off shift at 3:30 and went to start the car, and I couldn't start it, so you called the service man, the garage man, and he came and he lifted the hood, and the thing's packed with snow because I'd used that car as a snowplow to get into work. I mean, these are the things you did.
Do you ever just stare at the generation and, well, heck, my generation and just everything right now and go, you guys are crazy?
Well, I don't. Well, maybe Eric does. There are some things that go on, but I was glad to hear what you said you'd done. Hey, good for you. And then, well, and these are different things that happened in the farming. 78 was the first year. Okay, Eric's father's getting older. We're needing help. There is no help available for farm work. Everybody that was working was in the oil patch. So we went on the agricultural exchange program, and we had young adult exchange students from all over the world for the next 25 years.
And that was really a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
There were times when you'd shake your head and wonder just what we were getting into, but it really broadens your outlook on life, I'm telling you, when you get the kids from Australia or Denmark or England. And we had we still have good friends there that we hear from them every Christmas. And we look forward to their letters to see what they're doing.
What's some of the things have in 25 years that people come stay with you and work on the farm that you learned? You say it broadened your horizons. What were some of the things that surprised you about doing that?
I don't know, surprised. You learn to tolerate, to be with, well, you learned there was other people that were different from you, and so you sort of had to, they adapted to you, you adapted to them, and sometimes, because what we started doing was every 5 years we would go off to either Europe and visit the families of the 5 that we'd had previously. And you'd get to some of the places and you'd go, oh, now I know why they were like that. So we had them from everywhere. As Eric said, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, England,
Australia,
and New Zealand, Japan.
Yeah, the one from Japan, that was a bit of a shock. I'll let Leona tell that.
It was a private program, this international agriculture. It was set up, and so it was not, the government had nothing to do with it, except to make sure we had all the right visas. But on the program, boys, women or men, 18 to 30, could come to go pick a country to come to, and then they would send their resume would go in the office, where the head office would say, well, that sounds like a good place, whether you want beef or whether you want grain farming or whether you want to be home management or agri-mix, which is the girls meant you worked inside or outside. And so you'd get this resume from each one. Well, and now we're up to 91 when Eric's talking about this. And we got the resume of this girl from Japan who had been, turned out she was a round the worlder. She was the first girl out of Japan to do a round the worlder, which meant 7 months in Australia and then 7 months in Canada. And so I read the resume and I said, oh, okay, yeah, sounds good, but oh dear, I'm going to have a step stool in my kitchen because Japanese are very short. So that year, when she finally arrived, I went to Saskatoon to pick her up from the plane, and I never saw her come off the plane. And I thought, what am I going to do? This girl has vanished. And I looked over, but now the airport is empty. I look over toward the airport, and there's this dark girl. Oh, sorry.
I'm moving things.
This dark girl at the carousel. So I walked over, carefully looked at the ground, and said, Keono? Yes, she said. And I looked at her and I said, thank God. She was 2 inches taller than I was. In her resume, it said she had a basketball coach, had written some letters about her, and I thought, yeah. But she was. So I was this, and then my niece from here, who used to come out for university break and work at the farm, she was 2 inches taller than I. So it's the first time in my life I was the shortest person in my kitchen. So that's it. Keono is one of the few that we have lost track with. I was over in Japan. I have met her family and everything else, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, but I heard later that there had been a bad earthquake in that area, and I wonder.
I wonder, with the 25 years of doing it, and if it isn't a specific type of temperament or person or something that allows them to be a part of that program and want to come experience farm life in a different country. I assume that there must be a joy to have in the house.
It depends. Yeah. Some of them, I think, their parents encouraged them to go because they couldn't get them to do anything at home. So send them overseas and learn to be what it's like to be in another country. But
what do you think, Eric?
Oh, there was the odd one that is a little different and maybe behaved more like a Canadian. I can think of one that way, but on the whole, they were really good people to have around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just it didn't bother you to take them anywhere, and they were quite happy to. They really wanted to get out and see the country as well. So and it's the same when we go back and they take us out. They know what we want to see. We don't want to see the middle of some city. They'll take us out in the country. see the country as they see it, and that they know we would enjoy visiting.
Have you guys traveled quite a bit then?
Yes.
Where all over have you been to all these different countries where these people have come from? What has been maybe first off your favorite country that you went and visited?
Well, I started, as I said, my father was from Denmark. So I automatically have a soft spot there because I've got family there too, and I've been there several times. So Denmark is the one that I like the best. But every country is different. Every country is, you can't pick. Every time you come home from all these countries, you say, thank God I'm home in Canada, back in Canada again. We're the best place to be.
Which brings me to politics. You guys have been through so many different prime ministers and political landscapes. Is it something that you focused on, watched? Is there times when you can just look back and go, man, this was a tough time, this is a tough time, or this is small compared to where we've been?
Not for me. I just go along with my life.
No, I worry about the way the country is going right now. What is the debt we're piling up? The way I was raised, you if you had an extra dollar, you saved it. You didn't rush out and spend it. And the idea of just going more and more into debt, it bothers me a certain amount. But I know that it's not going to affect me. It's going to affect the family that follows me. And you can't really do much about it. This virus we're worried about now, and has shut everything down. It was really nice. Last night we went out for supper. It's the first time for a long time.
And where did you go?
Mr. Bill's. Yeah. What we've been doing through this mess is probably once a week we just get in the car and we go exploring, local exploring. So we're seeing, this is a school district that we've heard of, and is this the condition of the old school? And yesterday, no, not yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. Yesterday we did south and west of Lloydminster.
Okay.
And just toured up and down the different road allowances and saw things, We didn't know there was this many hills out here, or, where did that big lake come from? And we'd see the names of people, and that's the disappointing now, is no farm has a name on it anymore, so you just don't know anything. But no, and we've been doing that. We were up into what did we go looking for? And the muddy road stopped us. Where the Lashburn, Hewitt's Landing.
Hewitt's Landing.
Yeah, we couldn't get there.
All right. Well, it was just before I sat and talked with George and Evelyn Mann.
Yeah.
And we got talking about Hewitt's Landing and them taking cattle across it back in the day when it was just a barge. Mm-hmm. And what a sight that would have been.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about and taking those drives, we do now with the kids. It's crazy. You can live in this area all your life and never travel down one road. And you go down that one road and you're like, man, it's kind of cool little spot. Didn't know this was here.
Yeah.
And you can do that anywhere in this country.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really is interesting. And then, of course, then you get these roads going to just oil sites, but we can recognize those, so you stay off those. And I said I'm really good at U-turns, so that was the only one we really had to U-turn. Eric had the road figured out.
Well, it showed a road on the municipal map, right down to where we wanted to go. And the last mile, I don't know, somebody must have been dreaming when they drove that line. No, I'd heard about Hewitt's Landing all my life because that was the place a lot of in the early days they brought lumber down and people went up there and got it and some people came that way.
Well, as Eve was saying, mans brought their cattle across at Hewitt's Landing. Or when then a week ago, we went to Pine Island where the gully meets the North Saskatchewan River. We hadn't been there in years. And they've got a big plaque that tells the story of Pine Island. There was 5 different forts built on Pine Island in the 1700s. Some were abandoned, some were burned. All that history around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's well, when you start doing these interviews for the archives, or when I started doing the podcast, I mean, and just the amount of people that have stories to tell are endless. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to look that far in our community to find them.
Yeah.
What was the first car you ever had?
It was that blue and white one, wasn't it?
No, we had a little green Chevy 2-door before that.
Do you remember what it cost?
I think it was probably about 23 or 2400. Then one of our trips down, well, the only trip we took down east, we went down and drove a car back. Picked it up in Oshawa.
Okay, yeah.
So that was an interesting trip. Got a picture with our son and Paul Bunyan's Blue Ox in Minnesota.
Well, there you are. You've got a 2-year-old, and we flew down, and when we visited family and then picked up the car and headed home. So what do? You put a slab of plywood across the back seat, and it filled up. And that's where he rode. No such thing as car seats or anything else. And all we had to do was make sure we stopped soon enough in the evening that we could get him his mashed potatoes to eat for supper. Away we went.
It's pretty crazy now that kids pretty much have to sit in a car seat until, what is it? I'm going to butcher this. I want to say it's like 80 pounds until they're out of booster seat. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, Don's had the first car seat he had was just a seat with a plastic seat with a bar across the front with hooks that just hooked over the back of the seat. And he would ride in the front with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was how we did it. And then Neil was 2 years younger. He never actually had a much better car seat. But by that time there was 2 boys, so they were put in the back.
How was parenting?
It was good. It was good. And when you get to be teenagers and you've had all these exchange students with the problems that come up with them, I said those boys got through teenage without me even really noticing it. Because anything they thought of,
it had already been thought of.
Had already been done.
What was one of the things you worried about with children, or your kids getting older? Maybe some of the things they'd be exposed to, or situations they'd be put in. What was some of the things you worried about as parents?
For me, it was mostly partying and drunk driving. That was because I worked in the emergency department, And it could be that because I'd come home and tell them those stories of what I was getting in that emergency department, that we just never had that serious problem.
No, they both went through that stage without any trouble. Yeah.
They both played hockey in the wintertime. That was
They were-
came and that
Well,
they
they-
came to school here at the comp. We were at the east end of the Lloydminster bus line. Whereas
The northwest end of the Lashburn bus line.
yeah, and our son lives out there now he's taken over the farm in our house. Where they came to Lloyd, the boys came to Lloyd, his kids are going to Lashburn, or have been educated in Lashburn. This is how the school keeps changing. The other humorous thing that I wanted to tell you about, when this COVID thing hit, it's the first time Eric and I have ever been fired from a job or let go. We were not allowed to do Meals on Wheels anymore because we're too old.
And how do you feel about that?
I think it's a joke, but anyway. Surely to goodness, most of us are adults and we can judge. And public health really, I don't know, public health went berserk.
How so?
With really all right, we grew up knowing that we would have to have a disease of some kind. We lived through epidemics of measles and epidemics of mumps and epidemics. I worked in the epidemic of polio before they established vaccine. And you kept on living. You just tried to avoid getting it the best way you could, and you lived with the results. And one of the things that really, I think, has been really cruel is when a senior was in a care home and is confined to a room.
Yeah.
And confined for weeks on end. Now, the ones that are maybe starting to suffer a bit of dementia, it's not going to get any better. It's going to be worse. It's like being in jail, I guess. Only I don't think they were even allowed out as much as if you were in jail. I've never experienced it. So, we'll see. Mother Nature seems to have different things to keep the populations of the world under control.
That's what I say. It's Mother Nature's population control. It's an awful way of saying it, but in some of the countries, at one time, with something like this, there'd be thousands and thousands of people would die, and you couldn't do anything about it. Now we can more or less keep people living. And not, most of the deaths from this virus have been in old folks' homes and people that were probably suffering other health problems. And well, the same thing happened with the flu. When you got the flu in the fall, it was the same thing. Older people that had any kind of problems were the ones that couldn't make it. And I guess you just have to live with it.
Can I go back to when you asked about politics?
Sure.
Okay, I said that. No, I don't. actually was the reeve of the RM of Wilton for 6 years. I was on council, 10 total. First woman to do a thing like that in northwest Saskatchewan. So that's right down at the grassroots. So then you learn to work with the different political parties. And
What did that teach you?
to stick to your guns. And that it wasn't all that terrible working with a group of men. And it's all that. And you learned that your road was not the most important thing in the municipality, or you started looking bigger and bigger and bigger, and how it would affect the whole general public. I can remember being in here in Lloydminster, having meeting with Bill McKnight, who was our MP on the Saskatchewan side, and they were discussing about putting Highway 16 through, or doing a bypass. Well, it was shot down by the businessmen of Lloydminster because they did not want to lose the off-the-highway business. And there was nothing I could say. I was only one person. But because the rural areas, we griped when we used to have to drive through Vegreville and Vermilion, and here, Lloydminster. So they have not. And now the bypass for Lloydminster, if it ever gets done, will still be within Lloydminster. It won't be way outside. Because what was sort of planned was to cut off somewhere by the Blackfoot area and go south, because you couldn't go north because of the sloughs and whatnot, and come out about the Wayscale north of Marshall. I don't know if it'll ever. The land has been set aside, or how do they put They put something on some of the land so that you can't sell the land without knowing that in years to come
They could use it for a roadway.
that they can come in and take it.
When you look at your guys' lives, what's one of the biggest accomplishments or sense of pride you have of something you've done?
I suppose. I've kept my whole family as healthy as possible. We've raised 2 good boys. I've been content with my life. I've had probably the best of everything. I've never been threatened. I've never been starving. Life has been good. And I'm happy with it. But it's and I've made it alive this far.
No, I tell people, I think I've lived through some of the best years that this country is going to see, as far as I can see, looking in the future. It won't be as good as the years that we've just passed. So I've got to be happy with that, and I'm healthy, and I get out for a walk every day if I can manage it, and play around the golf badly. And so I can't really complain. It's been compared to a lot of people, it's been a good life. We accomplished a lot. The farm is going ahead. A lot bigger than I would ever expected. And so I'm quite content with what the life I've had.
Although when we talk about traveling, like, I've been around the world, but what, 2 years ago, we did Atlantic Canada and Newfoundland.
Driver flew out there and then
No,
drove.
we flew out and took a bus. We take bus tours, and then you don't have to be worrying about a gas station and a hotel and whatnot. And just enjoy what's going along. And like, we know so little about our fellow Canadians,
Yeah.
but they think like the Western Canadians, quite a lot the same, totally different than from in the middle of Ontario. And then last year, we went to Churchill.
Really?
And
See the polar bears.
Yeah. And
Well-
did you see a polar bear?
oh
We
yeah,
saw
from
a few.
yeah, we saw
They
some.
got very close.
But we learned so much, and this is still in our country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the trip to Churchill, and this is again, it cost us as much in airfare to go to Churchill as it does to go overseas.
Just because of how remote it is.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
just
so.
the lack. Well, it's flying all in Canada, and Canada flying across Canada.
Yeah.
You can see why the people from Newfoundland don't. They can't get back all that often. But
Yeah. It's a long ways.
it's a long way. It's a long,
Yeah.
But you've flown over to Europe and all that sort of stuff, and so.
Well, I've been all across Canada and love Eastern Canada. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think we can argue what you guys have been talking about is you can pick any spot in Canada. It's beautiful. There's uniqueness to it all.
Yeah.
You get the right day here in the fall. The leaves, you're driving on 303 out along the gully there, and it's just as good a view along there as you'd find anywhere. And no, we've really been in a very favored spot.
I don't think better words could be spoke. Looking back over your lifetime, what was your favorite decade? Like, if you could go back to a decade and replay it, or sit in on a conversation, or where would you go in your lifetime?
I think probably the 80s were probably I enjoyed more than any time, really.
And what about the 80s?
I don't know. I think we had, we had fairly decent crops, we had good help, and we seemed to have time. We weren't...
Everybody was. I was going to say, for me, 75 to 85. Those years.
It's funny, those years come up an awful lot when I talk to people of your generation and a smidge younger than you. Is the 80s, or in that time frame.
Yeah,
It's curious.
yeah.
Whether we were mature enough that life seemed to be great, that we didn't have to worry about anything, I don't know. but we were experiencing different things. That was those years our boys were growing up. We were.
So they were getting established by that time.
No, 75. Don's only 20 by that time. And then we had the exchange program, which was enlarging our whole world, and we'd take off every 5 years and go to the different countries to visit. So we're learning more all the time, and it was good. I was on council and learning all about grassroots politics and all that sort of stuff.
Did you guys take a trip every 5 years? Is that what I heard there?
Approximately.
Yeah.
If he didn't go till 85, and then after that.
Most of these trips that she was going on took place at harvest time.
No, those were just around the world.
Yeah.
I'm getting out of here. It's too busy.
No, it's really something, and you do appreciate where you live. And
I cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
If you were going to impart some advice on your 20-year-old self, if you could go back and say, I've seen the future, what would you say next?
Go for it. Yeah. I wouldn't change it.
Wouldn't change it?
No, we've been through a pretty fortunate time, our lifetime, both of us. Things were always improving. And I can't say we're too badly off right now. We've got a comfortable condo and friends there, and provided the city gets done tearing up our road.
What's the biggest change you two have seen in Lloydminster then?
Well, it would be the growth.
Yeah.
The growth, and that's the joke that comes up as we're sitting around having coffee, saying to the rest of the people from Lloyd that are in the condo, what was built? What used to be on that spot? And and then the memories come up. And and then, well, we haven't got Jim Hill anymore because Jim's not in Eric's coffee group with this COVID thing. But his memories went back even more of Lloydminster's than what Eric's did, so we'd be saying.
Jim was just a vocabulary,
Encyclopedia
of Lloydminster. You bring up a name and he could tell you who they were married to, what families they had, the whole thing. Truly amazing. No, it's all the places we've been. I think we'd probably if given the choice, we'd probably end up back here.
So.
The close one would be County Cork in Ireland, where my grandfather came from.
Pretty special place.
Well, to me it was, because we stayed in the house that he was probably born in, and got walked around up to the place where they dug the peat. And as I say, I think I could live there if I had enough money. Don't have to go there looking for a job, though.
So, and that is the thing too. If you can you can travel and look at things and whatnot, but when you've got family there, it makes it all more real, and you can remember, and they can remember things and tell you things, and you've learned all this history, and that's.
So if you were going to go somewhere tomorrow, or tell me to go somewhere tomorrow, in all your travels, where would you tell me to go then?
Well, you've been to Scandinavia, so I won't send you back there. I think the one that bothered me the most was Vietnam.
Bothered you?
Because we had the history of the war and the Civil War and all that, and the stupendous history there, but it makes you open your eyes a little bit more about what's going on in the world, and you don't listen to the stuff you hear on the radio.
Yeah, the media.
There was this one place, what was it, in the killing fields where...
And that was in Cambodia.
Oh, Cambodia. I get all those Asian countries muddled. There's actually centennial, what do you call,
Monument or?
Monument. The skulls, layers of the skulls of people
are on
they've
it?
killed. Yes. And I should be able to put up with things like that, but I said, Derek, no, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is too much. And then you go along and you listen to their stories and the fighting, and you hear the stories mostly from America of what those young Americans were put through by sending over there to fight in the jungles and all that sort of stuff. It's a horrible, sad, and yet those people are so kind and nice and whatnot now, but they've been through supreme hell. Maybe I just haven't any guts, but as I said to Eric, I can't look at this, so I went and sat down.
So you think that's something everybody should probably go and see?
It should be, yeah.
And that's Cambodia.
Yeah.
That wasn't the Americans there. That was Pol Pot, I think.
Yeah. It was a civil war almost, wasn't it, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
But
was going to remake the country, and everybody was going to go out in the fields and work in the rice fields, and if you didn't, you ended up well, they had big pits there. There were these skulls that come out of. When you died from starvation, they just throw you in there and covered you up.
oh, they lined them up and hit them on the back of the head with those steel things into the pit. Well, but Vietnam, we were there where the Americans were, where they were. We saw the tunnels that the Viet Cong lived in and under to escape, and in the jungles. It's indescribable. And so you can see why it's bad. We're so happy to live in Canada
Absolutely.
and live here.
Well, is there anything else that I've missed? I know you can't squeeze in everything.
You can't squeeze in.
Especially a lifetime of memories and stories and traveling and farming and children. And I feel bad. I always try and get as much as I can, because with the Lloydminster Archives, when I first started this, I found out my grandfather had been recorded by him back in like 96 or something like that, and none of the family knew. So as I listened to it, I was like, as I'm watching the minutes tick by, I'm going like, it doesn't go on, and he doesn't get a part 2 or an hour or two. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
And so it was very special. And so when I have people on, if there's something else we should talk about, or there's something else, I hopefully have captured as much as I can possibly grab. To those who ever listen to this has been very interesting. You guys have traveled an awful lot, seen an awful lot.
But I think every time we go up to Edmonton or coming back especially, I think about my grandfather when he came here in 1906. The first thing he did, he went up to Vegreville and bought 2 oxen and a cow. went on the train. The train had come in the year before, so they was able to go up there. Drove the 2 oxen and the cow back on foot to Lloydminster, and I think about all the miles and miles trying to get 3 animals down that road. You wonder. I think
What road? Yeah.
yeah, there'd be
A muddy trail.
there'd be a trail,
Yeah.
and you think, you know, and then you can drive that thing in a little over an hour.
Yep, and set the cruise and almost fall asleep and be in Lloyd.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's within, 100 years.
Yes.
Less than 100 years,
Yeah.
probably, that happened. You wonder what another 100 years will bring us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had a chance to ride outrider on a wagon train from Saskatoon to Battleford, and it was in the May of the year. Well, there you are, riding along day by day. I was on horseback. I wasn't in the wagons. And, you know, the prairie chickens would fly off the edge of the road, and unless you were awake, your horse would have dumped you, and things like that. And I can remember we got to Fort Battleford, and one of the other women went by me, and she said, "Oh, there's flush toilets and showers. We could go and get clean," because we'd been we were 5 or 6 days coming from Saskatoon to Battleford. Things that you never think of, but that was what she couldn't wait to get.
Yeah.
To flush
Flush a toilet.
Flush a toilet.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you take advantage of what things come by you and say, let's try.
I really appreciate you guys coming in and sitting down. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. So, if you ever need another little spiel about something,
I know
you
who to
can
call.
ask us. You can ask us.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Hey, folks. Thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time. Hey, Keeners. I thought I'd give a shout out today to Walker Grassel. He sent me a message after Wednesday's episode. Hell of a show today. Wasn't sure what to expect, but was definitely a good listen. He's a little bit of a history lover like myself. Enjoyed talking about some different things and the world today. So appreciate you wishing. I appreciate you listening, Walker. And to all you, the rest of you keeners, get back to it. We only got a few more hours, and then it's the weekend. It's going to be a cold one, but the weekend is upon us nonetheless. And if you're the champer, by all means, get your feet off the desk. Go back to work. You're making us all look bad. All right? We'll see you guys Monday.